Yo, just a heads up guys, my voice was a little bit off when recording this one. I just did a show with my band and I had to do like screaming for this show, like holy cow. So just, yeah, it was a lot of my voice, but I still wanted to get another video out and just, yeah, let's dive into it. And I love you guys, just saying thank you to everybody who's been supporting the channel. I'm very, very thankful. The episode Pizza Delivery is one of my favorite season 1 SpongeBob episodes. I watched this episode as a kid on TV, and I feel like it was one of the perfect examples of SpongeBob and Squidward's love-hate dynamic. And it actually makes sense when you look at where the idea actually came from. Back when SpongeBob was still being developed, Steven Hillenburg wanted to pitch an episode where SpongeBob and Squidward went on a road trip together. The idea was inspired by the 1989 movie Pow Wow Highway, which involved a more innocent character traveling with a crankier one. Hillenburg worked on this road trip concept with Aaron S. and Sherm C., two other writers on the show. And during that process, they came up with a lot of the gags and character ideas that would eventually be used in Pizza Delivery. But before that, at one point, this road trip story could have become the actual pitch episode sent in to Nickelodeon. But Hillenburg eventually moved away from that idea and chose Help Wanted instead, which looking back was probably the right move, since Help Wanted introduced SpongeBob, the Krusty Krab, and the basic world of the series in a much cleaner way. But that road trip concept did not go to waste. Aaron and Sherm brought it back during season 1, and a lot of those early ideas they originally came up with eventually became Pizza Delivery, this exact episode. So yeah, don't worry, I wasn't just rambling on about all of that for the sake of length. That context is interesting, right? It's cool to know that like this episode, Pizza Delivery, one of my favorites, could have been the first episode of SpongeBob or the pilot episode. But like I said, Help Wanted was definitely a much safer choice. But yeah, man, in a weird way, this episode is almost like a leftover version of what the SpongeBob pilot could have been. But what makes that even more interesting is that Pizza Delivery was not just an ordinary season 1 episode thrown together later. Despite being the 10th season 1 segment to air, Sherm C has said that it was actually the first regular episode worked on after the pilot. So even more background information for you guys about this one, Pizza Delivery was the second episode ever made after Help Wanted. And honestly, thinking back, it's easy to understand why Nickelodeon may have sat on this episode for a little while, as the entire setup of the episode depends on viewers already understanding the Krusty Krab. Help Wanted introduces the restaurant and SpongeBob's job there, while other episodes like Plankton help establish how valuable a Krabby Patty is in this show's world. So by the time this episode Pizza Delivery aired, the Krusty Krab already felt like a successful restaurant. So the idea of Mr. Krabs suddenly selling Krabby Patty pizza lands a lot better. That early production timing also helps explain one detail that a lot of people miss. And I mean, it makes sense because, as I always say, this is something only a nerd like me would catch. And also, you know, the SpongeBob Wikipedia, I gotta give them some credit here as well. But believe it or not, this is one of the only SpongeBob episodes that does not feature any sort of bubble transition, which is crazy. I mean, when you think of SpongeBob, those transitions are a part of the show's DNA, right? But it goes back to that point I was just going over, as because Pizza Delivery was made so early in the production order, it seems to have been completed before those transitions were fully established as a regular part of the series. And that's why these types of things are interesting to me. This isn't me just reading off of a wiki, this is me bringing it all together. Bubble transitions are certainly a small thing, and I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't even notice this, but bro, I got too much free time, and this is the type of stuff that I like to obsess about. Moving on though, early in the episode, SpongeBob and Squidward set off in the boat to deliver the pizza, and one of the funniest visual gags happens before they even get stranded. Squidward tells SpongeBob to shift into reverse, but SpongeBob panics when he looks down at the gear shift, and for a split second, the words change to Korean. Now, if you've ever wondered what these words actually say, they're actually the Korean words for go forward and go backwards, or reverse. I feel like the gag kind of implies this, but if you were ever wondering exactly what the words mean, now you know, alright? And I've got even more pointless and random bits of trivia about this episode, so let's keep it going, as once the delivery starts going wrong, the episode introduces a couple of new background characters. And this is one of my favorite things to cover. You know, over the years, we've gotten such a huge cast of different incidental characters. And one thing I love about this series I've been doing, where I've been covering every season 1 episode, is we get to see how that cast of incidentals has slowly developed over time. For example, when we talked about the episode Ripped Pants, we've seen that all of these incidentals were introduced for the very first time in that episode. And while the incidentals that were introduced in this episode, Pizza Delivery, aren't the most interesting, it's still cool to analyze it all, so let's do that. As one of the new characters introduced in this episode is the Swordfish Trucker, who only appears briefly, and honestly is kind of forgettable, but the other character introduced might ring a bell for you guys a little bit, as it's this angry customer from the end of the episode who is very disappointed about not getting his Diet Dr. Kelp. After SpongeBob and Squidward survive the entire trip and finally arrive at this guy's house, this customer flips out because he did not get the drink that he ordered. SpongeBob checks the order and realizes that there was never a drink listed, but the customer is not having it and the dude just tweaks out. And it actually leads to a really cool moment where Squidward stands up for SpongeBob, you know, the dude who annoys him and ruins all of his days off from work. He actually stands up for SpongeBob. But yeah, both of these characters were introduced in this episode. The Swordfish dude and then this guy, which he doesn't really have a name, we're just gonna call him the Rude Customer.
Or, as we like to say, the Crustomer.
But another interesting thing about this character is that it looks like he may have been based on Incidental 6, as when we put these two designs side by side, we can see a little bit of a resemblance. So I'm going to assume that this Rude Customer fish was adjusted from an existing background fish rather than being created completely from scratch. Nonetheless, after this episode, this Rude Customer character would pretty much disappear from the series for years. And for a long time, his role in Pizza Delivery felt like a complete one-off, until he finally returned, and he's appeared a couple of times since. But hopefully he's gotten over that whole Dr. Diet Kelp situation. And what a rude guy. If you've ever worked retail before, you know how rude customers are sometimes, and this guy's a prime example of it. So shout out to Squidward for shoving that pizza in his face. He deserved it. Moving on though, here's a random fact that I learned from the wiki when researching this episode, and it's a tiny detail that's very easy to miss, as when Squidward knocks on the door of that customer we were just talking about, his knocking lines up with the background music. Now, here's the difference between me and the wiki, is I'm going to play the audio and show you exactly what I'm talking about, so roll the clip. Now, it might have been intentional, or it might have just worked out perfectly in the final edit. Who knows? But either way, it is something that happens in this episode, and I wanted to talk about it. Oh, and before I forget and move on from this scene, for those of you who don't already know, that drink that the customer was complaining about, his Diet Dr. Kelp, is a very clear parody of Diet Dr. Pepper, which just thinking about that is making me really thirsty right now, guys. These voiceover sessions, you know, you gotta have a drink with you, and maybe for the next session, I'm gonna make sure I have a Dr. Diet Pepper or a Diet Dr. Kelp. Listen, all right, I'm an older millennial, I'm allowed to make cringe jokes like this, but another major production detail from Pizza Delivery has to do with the Krusty Krab itself, as this episode gave the art team one of the first concrete production references for the inside of the restaurant. Before this, they were still figuring out a lot of the Krusty Krab's interior layout. The episode Help Wanted had established the outside of the building and parts of the kitchen, but this episode Pizza Delivery helped lock in the dining area as an actual reusable space, as this piece of art was made for this episode and was most likely used as a reference shot for the animation. The art team needed a version of the interior that could be used consistently across the rest of the season, and this episode helped create that standard. Now, one last detail I find really funny is how specific the production art can get sometimes, as during the making of this episode, the art team even created a model sheet just for the Krusty Krab pizza box, which sounds kind of ridiculous at first because it's literally just a pizza box, and there's tons of items like this throughout SpongeBob that don't get model sheets. But I mean, it shows just how important this pizza box was to this episode that they even made like a reference sheet just for the pizza box. And I've made this joke before, but I gotta ask, would you eat a slice of a Krusty Krab pizza? Remember, it's made by Mr. Krabs just taking Krabby Patties and turning them into pizza, but would you eat a slice? I think I would. I would give it a try. But let's head over to another episode, and before we do, just a real quick reminder to everybody, I am one of the only SpongeBob Sleep channels that does not use AI in my content. I make all of this from scratch and put a lot of love into it. I don't just read off of a wiki. Like anything anything that I cover in this episode, guys, I have to go and confirm it's real, and I have to show it to you visually, which is what keeps this, entertaining and fun. Also, just saying, I know not everybody likes sleep content, but there clearly is a big audience for it, so I do like the fact that I'm one of the few people that's providing this content for an audience that clearly wants it, but I'm not using AI, so just saying. But let's head over to another episode with more Easter eggs, and facts, and trivia, and all of that nerdy stuff that I care about way too much. Now, the episode Home Sweet Pineapple is an interesting one, as it's one of those season 1 episodes that doesn't have a huge amount of behind the scenes trivia, but I've got lots of cool shit that I want to talk about from this episode. And before I do, real quick, am I allowed to say that, guys? Are you gonna unsubscribe to me? Back in the day when I used to work on that other channel, a lot of the audience was kids, so I've kind of trained my brain to not swear during videos, but you guys should hear me when I'm not in a video. I swear a lot, but let me know, was me saying the word shit okay? I know some of you are gonna be like, just be your authentic self, but I feel like we've built a relationship here on this channel, and I care about your guys' perspective. So I'm gonna shut up and get into the Easter eggs and trivia, but let me know and be honest in the comments. But yeah, the first thing I wanna talk about is Bikini Atoll. Now, before this episode, Bikini Atoll had only really been seen in the theme song opening, where the camera drops from the island down into the underwater world of Bikini Bottom. But in Home Sweet Pineapple, the show actually brings that location into the episode itself. And I like this personally, as it's a cool little piece of world building, since it kind of makes the opening feel less like a random visual and more like an actual place that exists within the SpongeBob universe. Later on in later episodes, SpongeBob would actually visit this location in the season 2 episode, Pressure. But this is the first time that the show actually starts treating it as more than just part of the intro, with it getting a shot throughout the actual episode. But here's something that's way more important than that, and that's the introduction of SpongeBob's parents, Harold and Margaret Squarepants. After SpongeBob's pineapple house gets eaten by nematodes, which would really suck, dude. They literally just eat his house, and my guy's just homeless for a majority of the episode. But after that happens, he has nowhere to live. However, he does have one viable option, and that's moving back in with his mom and his dad. Any grown man's worst nightmare, to be honest with you. But yeah, this gave the writers a very natural reason to show them for the first time, right? It's a natural introduction to these characters. And it's important as it establishes that SpongeBob does have a family outside of Bikini Bottom. For all the episodes before this, it would just be focused on that main cast. But this was one of the first example of two semi-reoccurring characters popping up. After this, Margaret and Harold would go on to become semi-regular characters, like I was saying, appearing in other episodes like New Digs or Walhalla. But Home Sweet Pineapple is where the show first pulls back the curtain and lets us meet SpongeBob's family. Also, in my opinion, it makes SpongeBob feel a little bit more grounded, because even though he lives by himself and works at the Krusty Krab, this episode reminds us that SpongeBob does still have a family that he can technically go back to. I don't know why I'm overanalyzing this stuff so much, but like I said, guys, I just like this shit, man. I just like it. Why would I go outside and do productive things when I could sit here and obsess over every single season 1 SpongeBob episode? But let's get back to the program here, alright? As that focus on SpongeBob's family also leads into a weird piece of Patrick lore. If we rewind a little bit, when SpongeBob first needs somewhere to stay, Patrick talks about his own house and casually reveals that he was kicked out of his parents' house years ago for unknown reasons.
Looks like we gotta move back with Mom and Pop.
Well, you can't move back in with your parents. When my parents kicked me out of the house, I never went back.
He then says he built his rock home entirely by himself. At the time, that was basically Patrick's only known backstory, considering the fact that his parents had not been introduced yet. So this might seem insignificant right now, but at the time, this one throwaway line gave fans one of the first real pieces of information about his life before living under this rock right here. Years later, this would become a lot messier once the Patrick Star Show came along and gave Patrick a much more expanded family situation. So technically, this line has basically been retconned. But for a long time, this was one of the only explanations we had for why Patrick lived alone. But speaking of Patrick's house, this episode also fleshes out the rock location a little bit more than earlier appearances did. Amongst all of the production art released over the years, it's been revealed that this episode gave us some new angles of his rock home location. But I'd say the biggest detail is that we finally get to see the inside of Patrick's rock home for the very first time. At first, in this episode, it's shown with a green couch and this TV right here, which makes it seem like Patrick actually has a small living place under the rock. But then later in the same episode, like literally the same episode, when SpongeBob stays with him after losing his pineapple home, the two of them sleep outside. And in shots when the rock is lifted up, the entire interior suddenly looks different. The couch and TV are gone, and it's basically just like a flat surface underneath the rock. And again, this all happens in literally the same episode. It's kind of funny because Patrick's house would go on to become one of the most inconsistent locations in the entire series. Like if we go to the episode I'm with Stupid, Patrick's home is presented as big enough for Patrick, his fake parents, and SpongeBob all to fit in there. But also if we go to an episode later in the series like Breath of Fresh Squidward, the place is large enough for Patrick to host an entire party. And this just continues, so stay tuned. Like I said, I'm doing all of these season 1 episodes, but guys, my goal is to do every single episode of SpongeBob like this, all the way up until season 16 or 17. By the time I'm done, it's gonna be like season 19, which is bonkers. But you'll see all of these inconsistencies and changes over the years, and that's why this series is interesting to me. I'm gonna just reiterate, this isn't me just reading off the wiki. It's gonna be really cool when I put all of these into one video, and we're able to go from episode 1 of season 1 all the way to the final segment of season 1 and see all of the changes and evolution of the series, which we've already done a lot so far because we're already like a decent way through season 1. So yeah, but that's pretty much it for Home Sweet Pineapple. Like I said originally, there isn't a bunch of crazy behind the scene details about this episode, but I do think the stuff that I did mention is interesting. In the episode, Pardon My Wand, another one from season 16, by the way, let me know what you guys think in the comments about season 16. I feel like there's been some really good episodes this season. But yeah, in this episode, SpongeBob comes into possession of a misplaced magician's wand. And of course, as you can imagine, SpongeBob doesn't give it back. He proceeds to cause absolute magical mayhem across Bikini Bottom, just like he does in this clip right here. Roll it.
Gary, did you redecorate the living room while I was out?
This episode is jam-packed with rapid-fire gags, as SpongeBob accidentally transforms and enchants everything in sight. And many of those gags are sly callbacks to SpongeBob's past antics. The first Easter egg appears on stage, including a very large snail with a bushy brown body. Longtime fans may recognize this creature as the elephant snail from the episode Don't Feed the Clowns, a one-off character from that episode. In that episode, the elephant snail was a circus animal that roared like an elephant and balanced on a beach ball. Well, Pardon My Wand brings the elephant snail back for an encore, making for a really cool Easter egg, as this character has not been seen since, and I don't think he's going to be seen again for a while after this. But yeah, as the episode continues, SpongeBob inadvertently casts a hiccup spell on himself, and this is where another Easter egg comes in. The uncontrollable hiccups SpongeBob makes throughout the scene might sound exactly like you've heard them before, and that's because the audio recordings of SpongeBob hiccups are literally reused from the episode Hiccup Plague. In Hiccup Plague from season 12, SpongeBob was afflicted with a citywide contagious hiccup outbreak, and Tom Kenny's ridiculous hiccup sounds in that episode were apparently so perfect that Pardon My Wand lifted them wholesale for this magic mission. Here's the Pardon My Wand version. And here's the Hiccup Plague version. And yeah, as you notice, they're like literally the exact same sound. Again, this might be a reference, but this might also just be the team being lazy. Tom Kenny is very old now, guys. He's aging, and honestly, if you even listen to his voice in the most recent SpongeBob movie, you can hear the age. So I imagine that they save certain sounds that he has to make so he doesn't have to redo them when he comes into the studio. That's just my theory, but who knows? As SpongeBob gleefully skips through town wielding the unruly wand, Pardon My Wand turns into a rapid montage of magical callbacks. For example, SpongeBob accidentally transforms a couple's boatmobile into a gigantic orange sea snake. If it seems familiar, it's because that very same slithery creature appeared in the season 14 episode Squidiot Box, when Squidward's imagination turned against him. If we look at a side-by-side, I'd say that these two are the same snake. They're the same color, and yeah, I think it's the same character. But the surprises continue as SpongeBob prances past familiar locals. For example, he skips by the exact same bench from the episode Something Smells. Here's a side-by-side, and yeah, I think they're the same. I mean, this old bench is drawn and placed exactly as it was in that season 2 episode, making it a little piece of SpongeBob history plunked into the background. Moments later, SpongeBob twirls past the ice cream parlor from the episode Hall Monitor. Here's another side-by-side, and it's definitely the same. And yeah, longtime viewers have seen this ice cream shop multiple times now. It's where SpongeBob caused mayhem as a hall monitor, and where Patrick got severe and comical sunburn back in the episode Sun Bleached. So its presence here further cements the idea that all these episodes share one connected lived-in world, a point that I've been pushing for the past couple of videos. Finally, Pardon My Wand caps off its reference parade with a brilliant deep cut. In the mayhem, SpongeBob accidentally shrinks Squidward, very similarly to the way he did back with Mermaid Man's belt. But yeah, this leaves Squidward tiny in his own garden. As if on cue, the same cockroach from the episode Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 4 appears, towering over mini Squidward and proceeding to rough him up.
Why is everything all tiny?
This is a direct homage of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 4 from season 3, making for another really cool reference. Our next episode is Sanitation Insanity. In this episode, Mr. Krabs' penny-pinching ways lands the Krusty Krab in trouble with the law, forcing him, or rather Squidward and SpongeBob, to clean all of Bikini Bottom's trash. Now, we're gonna get into the Easter eggs and trivia, of course, but I gotta be honest with you, Mr. Krabs is definitely in the wrong here. I mean, look at just how nasty the Krusty Krab is in the start of this episode.
Get in the bed! Filthy trash juice! Trash juice!
Hey, maybe we should use another garbage bag, Mr. Krabs. This one's kind of full.
Forget it, boyo! I'm not paying for another garbage bag!
You know, I used to fantasize about being able to try a real Krabby Patty, not like a fast food collab version, but a real one from the Krusty Krab. But after this episode, I'm good, I don't want one. But anyways, what starts off as a riff on Keep Bikini Bottom Beautiful, another littering themed episode, quickly turns into a chaotic adventure with a garbage truck mech. Along the way, Sanitation Insanity crams in nods to past SpongeBob episodes and broader pop culture overall. For example, early in the cleanup, SpongeBob uses his porous nature to his advantage.
Oh, all this fresh air feels great in my holes.
Now, if that sight and that sound feel familiar, it's because it's deliberately a reference to the episode Spongehenge, where wind blowing through SpongeBob's holes produced music that attracted jellyfish. This clip from Sanitation Insanity is also a callback to another older episode, Earworm, where SpongeBob's body became an instrument for a catchy song.
Keep your trap shut. But it wasn't my trap!
In fact, the brief melody SpongeBob whistles here in Sanitation Insanity is actually a familiar song, and you guys should already know. I mean, come on, it's the SpongeBob theme song itself. But as the trash collection escalates, the garbage truck SpongeBob and Squidward use actually transforms into like a full-on robotic transformer, sprouting arms and legs in parody of Transformers. This was confirmed by the production team. It's really cool. I mean, even the transformation sequence is a nod to Transformers. And supposedly, according to the team, it's also meant to be a reference to the Megazords from Power Rangers. I gotta say, seeing a mundane garbage truck become a literal robot battle monster is really cool. And there's more going on here. During the Robo Rampage, the show slips in a cameo that made any veteran fan cheer, including me. I'm a nerd and I was very happy. As the garbage bot smashes through various locations, one scene shows a shady-looking used boat dealership. And if you look closely, there's a familiar character here. If you guys didn't recognize him, the salesman right here is actually the same con man fish from Chocolate with Nuts. This character, also known as Incidental 118C, is famous for swindling SpongeBob and Patrick by faking an injury in that season 3 episode.
No self-respecting candy bar salesman would be caught dead without one of these. It's a candy bar bag, you knucklehead. Suckers.
Well, in Sanitation Insanity, he appears in New Grift, selling boatmobiles to an unsuspecting customer named Carl, only to have SpongeBob's runaway trash truck demolish his entire inventory. It's a perfect little Easter egg reimagining the con man as a sleazy used car or boat salesman, which is actually like spot on for his character. Set in the Camp Coral spin-off series, Squizzery is a campfire side adventure that teams up a young Squidward and Patrick. The title itself hints at a parody. It's a riff on the Stephen King story Misery. Fittingly, Squidward breaks his ankles and is stuck being cared for by Patrick, which is very similar to the Stephen King story itself. But don't worry, we're not going to be talking about that boring stuff. The episode strands Squidward and Patrick in the woods, forcing the unlikely pair to survive together overnight.
Your legs look funny. Are you okay?
Of course I'm not okay. Look at me. My ankles are more twisted than a pretzel.
Pretzel.
This prequel setting allows for some playful continuity twists and Easter eggs that cross-reference the main SpongeBob timeline. For example, one early gag in this episode quietly contradicts a beloved classic episode. Patrick is distracted by a boot and ends up tying up this boot.
Patrick!
Sorry again, Mr. Tentacles. Just tying my shoe. Ready!
Now, this is kind of a problem, guys, as if we rewind back to the iconic SpongeBob episode, Your Shoes Untied, there's something from that episode that the writer of Squizzery clearly missed. In that season 2 episode, neither SpongeBob nor Patrick knew how to tie their shoes at all. It's like the main plot point. I know that it is technically an alternate universe, as I established earlier, but it's still technically a prequel, so it's just very weird that Patrick in the prequel knows how to tie his shoes, but then doesn't know how to tie his shoes in the regular SpongeBob show. This was likely just a fun oversight, but for me personally, I can't imagine Patrick forgetting how to tie his shoes by adulthood. But anyways, let's get to the Easter eggs and references. Those are more interesting, as there are also hints of Patrick's future living situation. While stranded and needing a place to stay, Patrick cobbles together a shelter made out of wooden planks that's shaped exactly like his iconic rock home.
Check it out. I built us a rock.
You built a rock
Uh-huh.
out of logs,
Yep.
right next to an actual rock.
Correct.
This is a really cool bit of continuity and a cool reference to the original SpongeBob show. But keeping it moving, meanwhile, Squidward's misery in the woods gives rise to a brilliant pop culture reference. As Patrick cheerfully prevents Squidward from escaping, for Squidward's own good, of course, according to Patrick, Patrick responds to Squidward's orders with a deadpan line that may be familiar to some nerds out there.
Just leave me alone!
I'm afraid I can't do that, Mr. Tentacles. Until you're all better, I'm going to do everything for you. See?
This is actually a direct parody of Hal 9000's famous line where he says the following.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
So yeah, this is a reference to 2001: A Space Odyssey, a really cool reference for sci-fi fans. But visually, Squizzery keeps the Easter eggs coming. We're not done yet. At one point, a completely out-of-place landmark appears during Squidward and Patrick's trek back to camp. The Brooklyn Bridge can be glimpsed in the background right over here. It's a surreal blink and you'll miss it detail, implying the camp might be nearer to the surface world than we thought. But more likely, it's just a funny gag. Once the pair finally return to Camp Coral at sunrise, with Squidward tied to Patrick's back, they stumble into the boys' cabin. And this is where we can find some more Easter eggs, but we need to keep our eyes peeled, okay? For a split second, we can see SpongeBob inside reading this Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy comic book, which makes perfect sense in this timeline. Of course, young SpongeBob would be a huge fan of superheroes, especially the Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy series. And there's a few more things here, alright? When everybody leaves and Squidward and Patrick dance, we can see the camper rules list right here, and one amusing rule reads, all jazz must be smooth. This is also a reference. It's a wink to the SpongeBob episode Smooth Jazz at Bikini Bottom, the episode where Squidward obsesses over smooth jazz legend Kelpie G.
So nice to be surrounded by such kindred spirits.
You can say that again. It's a rare treat to mingle with true diehard smooth jazzes.
Is that a
lady. I've been a diehard since 10 this morning.
Clearly, even as a kid, Squidward is already enforcing jazz standards in their shared space, with him demanding that any jazz in his dorm must be smooth. Very funny. The episode Teacher's Pests from season 11 has a ton of Easter eggs. In this boating school episode, Mr. Krabs and Plankton are forced to attend Mrs. Puff's class, alongside their favorite person, SpongeBob, after a road rage incident. The premise sets up plenty of nods to past SpongeBob lore, so let's get into that, as I know that's what you guys clicked on the video for. Early on, Mrs. Puff shows an instructional boating safety video that pretty much gives tips and is a guide on how to drive a boat. And if this seems familiar to you, it's because this entire tutorial video is very similar to another video we got in another episode, season 5's Boat Smarts. That entire episode, Boat Smarts, is about Mrs. Puff hosting a boating safety documentary that stars SpongeBob and Squidward. So it might not be a direct reference here, but they're very similar. They have the same like vignette effect on, and it's really cool. But if we keep it moving, there's even more Easter eggs. When class begins, SpongeBob excitedly introduces something special, with him explaining how students earn gold star stickers for good behavior.
Did you know that every time you do something good, Mrs. Puff gives you a star sticker?
Stickers? I'm an adult. I don't care about stickers.
If you're a true SpongeBob fan, then you know that this is a direct callback to the iconic episode, New Student Starfish, where SpongeBob was the star pupil with a whopping 74 stars to his name across the episode.
And those drinks are recorded here on the Good Noodle Board.
Huh? Oh, sorry. Whoa!
In a funny bit of continuity error, here, SpongeBob has 0 stars on the board. But to be fair, this might be good continuity. It might be because it's been so many years since New Student Starfish. Maybe the board got reset. Plus, there's still boating school episodes, but we don't see SpongeBob in boating school like we used to, so maybe that's why. But nonetheless, SpongeBob has 0 stars in this episode, despite having a bunch back in New Student Starfish. But yeah, let's keep it moving. Mr. Krabs and Plankton become immediately obsessed with this reward system and begin competing by showering Mrs. Puff with fruit to earn stars.
Oh, is someone hungry? Ta-da!
Ooh, a grapefruit.
How about some melon?
Mrs. Puff soon realizes that they're bribing for stickers and snaps, exclaiming, "None of you will get any stars," effectively ending the contest. But this rivalry escalates through the driving test, leading to a chaotic finale. Notably, SpongeBob himself drives perfectly fine during the test, which is actually really weird considering the fact that SpongeBob is like unteachable. As you guys know, there have been so many gags throughout the show where SpongeBob just cannot drive. And he's tried, but he's just not very good at it. But yeah, I wanted to point this out because this is a really funny inconsistency. But let's get back to the Easter eggs, as there's a ton during the mayhem. When Mrs. Puff has had enough of Mr. Krabs and Plankton's antics, she uproots an entire apple tree and whacks them with it, shouting a very specific line.
You want stars? I'll give you stars.
So this one's really weird, but this line is actually a sneaky reference to the video game Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, in which protagonist Jill Valentine says the exact same phrase before defeating the final boss.
You want stars? I'll give you stars.
This is a very surprising deep cut, an M-rated game quote tucked into a SpongeBob episode. But hey, it suits Mrs. Puff like pretty well considering she's a crazy character. I guess whoever wrote this episode or somebody on the art team or just somebody is a fan of Resident Evil and found a way to sneak it in. They were probably in the middle of a Resident Evil 3 playthrough and were like, I'm just gonna find a way to put this in SpongeBob. The scene even shows cartoon stars circling the dazed Plankton's head. Teacher's Pet also plays with long-term continuity, but they also made a little bit of a mistake. Weirdly enough, Mr. Krabs and Mrs. Puff act like complete strangers in this classroom setting, despite having met and fallen in love back in Krusty Love, and having dated for 16 years as of the episode Whirly Brains.
Mrs. Puff, we've been dating for 16 years now, so I was sincerely hoping that today might finally be the day that...
Yes, Eugene?
Did I steal a little kiss?
Oh!
There's no on-screen explanation for this memory lapse, and was most likely an oversight by newer writers, who maybe didn't know this bit of SpongeBob lore, but hey, I'm an old school fan and I could not help but notice. The episode is packed with visual callbacks as well. In the background is a very familiar billboard. This right here is the Barnacle Chips billboard, representing the cholesterol-free snack from the iconic episode Chocolate with Nuts, which is where this billboard made its first appearance.
Eat barnacle chips. They're delicious.
They are most certainly not delicious.
Not the way I use them.
This exact same billboard also appeared in a later episode, Burst Your Bubble.
You got on the freeway by mistake!
So its inclusion here, making a third appearance, is a clear wink from the staff to eagle-eyed viewers like myself. This isn't just like a random billboard, I want to make this clear. This is 100% an Easter egg or reference from the production team, and it's really cool. But later, when a driving mishap fuses SpongeBob, Plankton, and Mr. Krabs into one grotesque body, Plankton ends up occupying one of Mr. Krabs' eye sockets.
Mr. Plankton, you were in a horrible boat accident. It's a miracle that you're alive. However, there were some complications.
Hey, what's all the screaming up there? Forget class. Now we can be together forever.
And this might not be a direct reference, but it's a bizarre sight that's directly reminiscent of a gag in another episode. The episode being The Other Patty, where the two rival restaurateurs also combined into a single being. It's an obscure reference, but side by side, as you can see here, the scenes are very, very close. Finally though, this episode actually had a scene that didn't make it into the final airing, or even just the final version of the episode at all, a deleted scene, where during the last session, SpongeBob unknowingly runs over a line of fake pedestrian cutouts on the test track. I actually was able to find the clip that was cut because Cartoon Corey goes so hard for you guys, and I mean also shout out to the SpongeBob wiki. And yeah, this moment isn't necessarily that dark, but it seems that it was later deemed too edgy for modern SpongeBob, and thus was removed from the episode, which honestly is actually a telling sign of changing standards. In earlier seasons of SpongeBob, a throwaway gag like this definitely would have flown under the radar. Like if you think of SpongeBob seasons 1, 2, and 3, there are tons of jokes like this in those episodes. But it seems that today, Nickelodeon is playing it a little more safe. However, if we go back in time, there are still some gags from earlier SpongeBob that were too inappropriate. And this brings us to our next episode, Just One Bite from season 3. This classic episode centers on Squidward's secret love for Krabby Patties, where basically he acts like he hates them, but once he tries one and takes like the smallest bite you could humanly take, yeah, that was the smallest bite ever. But after this, Squidward becomes addicted to Krabby Patties. And this episode, Just One Bite, is actually famous amongst fans for a scene that vanished after its original airing. This is another deleted scene. The deleted scene in question occurs during Squidward's midnight break-in. In the uncut version, shown only during the Totally Twisted telly premiere back in 2001, Mr. Krabs had set up a booby trap in the Krusty Krab for intruders to prevent people from breaking in when the stores close. But instead of a regular alarm system, he does something pretty crazy. Squidward sneaks through the door only to have a bucket of gasoline tip over and drench him. And what happens next is pretty crazy considering this is a kid's show.
Hey, this isn't water. This is gas.
This over-the-top trap, a bucket of gas, and a robot arm is oddly high-tech for Mr. Krabs, just saying, who usually isn't very tech-savvy, but it certainly shows the lengths that Mr. Krabs would go to protect his secret formula. But here's where the controversy comes in. By early 2002, Nickelodeon removed this gasoline trap scene from all reruns and future releases. They just cut that chunk out of the episode pretty much, so it just jumps. And also, I want to point out, if you're from Canada, this didn't actually happen overseas or in Canada, and let me explain why. You know, I try to keep my content as as accessible as possible. That way kids can watch it, and people my age, older people who grew up with the show, can also enjoy these videos. So just a heads up, this part is controversial, but it's also educational as well, I guess. As eventually, the official reason for this scene being cut came out later. The reason it was cut was in part out of sensitivity due to the episode airing shortly after 9/11, and largely due to standards and practices concerns about kids potentially imitating the dangerous gag with matches and fuel. And this isn't just speculation. Writer Jay Lender confirmed that even though the scene initially passed Nickelodeon's censors, the network reconsidered after the September 2001 attacks. But yeah, like I said, if you're a Canadian boy like me, that's why you remember seeing this scene still, as Canadian airings on YTV still kept the scene in. But yeah, there's a little fun fact for you guys. I know that wasn't necessarily an Easter egg, but in these videos, I'm probably going to start covering trivia and facts as well, and you gotta admit that was interesting. Let's talk about the episode Unreal Estate next. It's from season 10. In this one, Squidward tricks SpongeBob into thinking his pineapple house is dangerous to live in, hoping SpongeBob will move away. Well, as SpongeBob daydreams about new homes, the episode pays homage to SpongeBob's history in many subtle ways. Right from the title card, Unreal Estate telegraphs a hidden gag, with its background art being pretty much the same as another episode's background art, Sentimental Sponge. Both cards share a bold, colorful geometric pattern. The only difference is the color, with it being pink in Unreal Estate and yellow or orange in Sentimental Sponge. And while it's possible that they may have just reused the asset, SpongeBob writers and producers and artists in the past have done this, where they use a similar piece of art in the title card to pay homage to an older episode. I am rambling though, and this one definitely sounds like a little bit of a reach, but let's head over to more interesting Easter eggs. Our next episode is Call the Cops from season 11. This episode flips the script by putting SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs on the other side of the law. Plankton actually gets himself arrested after yet another failed formula theft, and the secret formula is locked up at the Bikini Bottom police station as evidence. To retrieve it, Mr. Krabs convinces SpongeBob to go undercover as police officers and infiltrate the station, a recipe for hilarious antics.
Have you got a license to sell these cookies?
Officer SquarePants, I don't think we ought to.
Let me handle this, Officer Mr. Krabs.
I don't have a license.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
As soon as they step into the station lobby, the background art delivers clever gags. For one, there's a framed photo of a donut on the wall, poking fun at the classic trope that cops love donuts, but right beside that is a wanted poster bearing a very familiar face, that of the Tattletale Strangler. I love references like this. Fans will remember this villain from SpongeBob Meets the Strangler, a legendary, iconic episode, and apparently the Bikini Bottom PD is still on the lookout for him. The fact that his wanted poster appears here is a continuity nod, as if the events of that episode have been filed in police records. And the station's back room holds another Easter egg for the observant. Pinned up on the wall is a wanted poster for another iconic SpongeBob villain. Roll the clip and I'll let you guys catch it.
You can interrogate the suspect.
I don't know how to interrogate.
Then just ask questions.
Come on, you guys gotta know this one. That's Dennis, the fearsome hitman from the original 2004 SpongeBob SquarePants movie.
Name's Dennis. I've been hired to exterminate you.
Dennis's rugged mug is instantly recognizable, connecting the series to the first movie's storyline even more. These background posters subtly expand the world building, implying that all of these notorious baddies share the same criminal universe. Really cool stuff. Let's talk about the episode Exchange Student Driver, a new one from season 16. When Mrs. Puff enrolls SpongeBob in a faraway driving school exchange program just to get rid of him, can't really blame her, our absorbent hero finds himself in a familiar location, Clopnod, a bizarre town where reckless driving is the norm, so SpongeBob fits right in. The premise flips the usual boating school formula, where SpongeBob's chaotic driving style, which is normally a nightmare in Bikini Bottom, like this guy has nearly killed people before, turns out to be perfect in Clopnod. In fact, he performs so well and is such a standout student that the Clopnodian instructor awards SpongeBob with a driver's license, carved on a turnip no less. And this is where our first Easter egg, well, I guess this is more of a fact, comes in. And don't worry, just saying, there are a ton of Easter eggs coming up, so stay tuned. This one's just really interesting, and it's actually kind of controversial. As if you go to the comments of the fandom page of this episode, you'll see that there's a lot of people upset at the fact that SpongeBob received his license, and I'll explain why. Creator Steven Hillenburg, the person who created Bikini Bottom, made SpongeBob like the OG of SpongeBob, famously said that SpongeBob should never permanently earn his license. Why? Well, to preserve the comedic tension with Mrs. Puff, which is a big part of many episodes, including this episode, Exchange Student Driver, but also to fulfill Nickelodeon's mandate that the show should revolve around a school setting and a teacher character. For those of you who don't know this, Mrs. Puff was a character that Nickelodeon pretty much demanded. They basically told Steven Hillenburg that if you're going to make a show like this, there needs to be some educational aspect to it, which is why SpongeBob goes to boating school and learns, though if you really think about it, the dude never really progresses. Well, at least he does in this episode, but that's the issue here. However, there's actually a workaround for this. By giving SpongeBob a license only in Clopnod, the episode cleverly skirts Hillenburg's rule without technically breaking it, since SpongeBob still isn't licensed in Bikini Bottom. He got his license in Clopnod, a completely different location. Let me know what you guys think about this one in the comments, but do you think that because it happened in a different location that it makes it okay? But yeah, a fun fact about this episode I wanted to talk about, but let's get into an actual Easter egg here. As throughout this episode, as it progresses and we see SpongeBob at Mrs. Puff's boating school, longtime viewers may catch a classroom callback in this episode. This thing right here is the good noodle board. Mrs. Puff's star chart, or basically like a chart for how she tracks the behavior of her students. It made its first appearance years ago, like 25 years ago, back in the classic episode, one of my favorites, New Student Starfish, where SpongeBob shows Patrick the board and explains its function before class.
Those drinks are recorded here on the good noodle board.
Huh? Oh, sorry.
SpongeBob in this episode eventually actually gets in trouble thanks to Patrick and loses one of his stars.
Turning, it is important to signal at least 40 feet from the
Big
turn.
fat meanie, you can't do that. She's the teacher.
What about the teacher? What? As if I really look like this.
Well, it's really cool to see it pop up again in this episode, and it shows that whoever wrote this episode knows their stuff. They're a real SpongeBob fan. As there's been other episodes that have shown Mrs. Puff's classroom, like the classroom at the boating school, and the good noodle board is not there. So this was intentional. Also, just saying, I don't normally do this, but if this Easter egg sounds familiar, it's because there's a very similar one in another episode that I covered recently, where the good noodle board popped up again. So yeah, just saying, this was a new Easter egg. Moving on though, I've got some more Easter eggs for you guys in the form of character cameos. And of course, all the cameos here are characters that are pretty rare. We're gonna be covering more cameos in other episodes in this video, so stay tuned. But let's get into it. As I mentioned, Mrs. Puff sends SpongeBob on like a boat driving exchange student thing, where he's being sent to Clopnod. And we get this scene where we see the travel there with a map. And there are a bunch of deep cut references on here. And I'm very proud, as they're ones that the SpongeBob fandom wiki hasn't even found yet. For one, just as the boat is approaching no man's land, we'll see right here that these are the trench monsters from the 2004 SpongeBob SquarePants movie. Now you might not see it right away because there's just eyes, but this is specifically a reference to when SpongeBob and Patrick are walking through right here, and as you can see, there's all of these different eyes. Also, they're very clearly like on the map in trenches, so yeah, this is a subtle reference right here, but it's definitely a reference. However, the next two are way more blatant. For example, just passing no man's land, we can see the Cyclops character from the same 2004 SpongeBob movie. This character right here, we can see that his leg or his boot is put down on the no man's land area of the map. Pretty cool. And if you were questioning the last two, here's one that absolutely confirms it. In that 2004 SpongeBob movie, we were introduced to Maximus, this character right here. And what I really want you to pay attention to is the small traffic light at the top of his head acting like a lantern of a glowfish. As if we go back to that same map part, look, Maximus is right here. The colors are slightly off, as you can see in this side by side, but the reason we know for sure is that traffic light on top of his head right here, which basically reaffirms the other 2 Easter eggs I was mentioning of the trench monsters and of the Cyclops, who also all appeared in that original 2004 SpongeBob SquarePants movie. I imagine that whoever, like the production team around this episode, exchange student driver, one of them probably worked on the movie or something in the past, but who knows. One other thing I want to talk about real quickly, and then we'll head into more Easter eggs in another episode, guys. Stay tuned because I've got some of the coolest Easter eggs coming up, but here's some behind the scenes stuff about this episode. As remember how I said SpongeBob got his license on a turnip? We actually got to see the process of how this came to life, with Shane Richardson, Hannah Hong, George N, and Amy L sharing these drawings online, where we can see the first process of the photo, the second process of the photo, then we can see the shot in the episode where it's blank, and then finally this shot where we can actually see the driver's license text. And fun fact, these were originally painted before being scanned in with the lines drawn digitally. So some really cool stuff right there, but let's head over to another episode. Next up is Insecurity Guards. In this one, SpongeBob and Patrick become watchmen at the Bikini Bottom Museum of Everything, and their security antics wreak havoc on the exhibits. But throughout all the museum chaos, a refined figure from SpongeBob's past is hiding in plain sight. If we look at this one scene early on, the camera pans across a crowd of museum goers. And if you're a true SpongeBob fan, you should be able to catch who's in this shot. Roll the footage.
Now, rule number 1 of guarding is don't let visitors touch stuff.
No touchy, no feely. Aye, aye.
For those of you who don't know or missed it, this guy right here is Monty P. Moneybags. And if we rewind all the way back to season 2, there was the episode Artist Unknown. Monty P. Moneybags is a wealthy art collector, and Squidward wants to impress him. But as you guys can imagine, this does not go very well.
Good day, sir. My name is Monty P. Moneybags.
The world-famous art collector?
You want to know, ne? I'm on a shopping spree, buying art for my new museum.
Your search is over. How about this one? I call it bold and brash.
More like belongs in the trash.
Sorry, I must have missed that one.
Monty Moneybags hasn't appeared in an episode in like 20 plus years. His last and only appearance was back in 2001's Artist Unknown. So to see him again in season 12, silently touring a museum as a background character is a deep cut Easter egg that really caught my attention. And there's more. If we head back to the 2004 SpongeBob SquarePants movie, we were introduced to this version of King Neptune. And as you guys know, his crown was a major aspect of that episode, with it hiding his baldness. This thing was very important to him, but it seems that even years later, it's still missing as a look.
Meet Patrick? I think that guy's trying to
touch that painting!
If we pause right here, we can see that it's still missing, and it can be found in the museum as one of the things that the robbers stole. This is a really cool Easter egg. I mean, that movie came out in 2004, so considering that this episode came out in 2019, it shows that the writers were really paying attention. Also, a fun fact, in this episode, we were introduced to this painting right here, and we would not see it for a long time after this. It seemed that originally it was going to be exclusive to this episode in Security Guards, but if we fast forward years later to the Camp Coral episode, Revel Revolution, it actually appears in this scene right here.
No one wakes us up like you, and I should know. I'm your biggest fan. Yeah, I go. I have all your albums.
Here's a side-by-side, and that's definitely the same painting, right? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. On top of that painting, there's a couple of other paintings in this episode that seem to be references. For example, this one painting here with Mr. Krabs and the Krabby Patty, it's actually a reference to the creation of Adam, a painting made by Italian artist Michelangelo.
What you doing?
I'm cleaning centuries of dirt from this priceless painting.
Going too slow.
I think I know how we can speed things along.
Or there's also this painting with Mrs. Puff right here, and it's actually a reference to the Mona Lisa, obviously, one of the most famous paintings ever. And there's actually a bunch of other cool references throughout this episode to famous statues and paintings, but we can't cover them all. So let's head over to another episode with more Easter eggs. The episode Mall Girl Pearl from season 9 has a bunch of really cool Easter eggs. In this one, Pearl Krabs is determined to snag her first job at the Bikini Bottom Mall, a mission that turns into a chaotic tour of the mall in hidden SpongeBob lore. As Pearl bounces between stores trying to get hired, the background fills up with familiar faces and references for longtime fans. For example, as Pearl passes by Scorched Coral, this store right here, keep an eye out for the Diggery-Doo player from the season 2 episode Something Smells. If you're wondering who the heck I'm talking about, it's this character right here.
Hi, Tambourine Girl. Hi, Timbali Man. Hi, Didgeridoo Player.
It's been like 20 years since we've seen this character. That all changed in Mall Girl Pearl. The character would also pop up in the season 13 episode Sea Urchin and Snail Fail during this scene, making his second appearance in like 20 plus years.
Look at all those people.
I know he seems like a random background SpongeBob character, but he's a very rare character. Heading back over to Mall Girl Pearl, there's other random characters that pop up in the background that we have not seen in a long time. Other rare characters. For example, Carl, the overzealous manager from the episode Selling Out.
Hi, gentlemen, I'm Carl. I'll be your new manager.
New manager?
I think you'll find working at the Krabby-O Mondays to be both a learning experience and an enjoyable one.
Yeah, that guy right there, he's spotted twice at the mall. Once outside the Bangles and Dangles store, and later in the food court right here. Carl's cameos nod to his infamous stint running Krabby-O Mondays in season 4, so it's pretty cool to see him pop up again, even though it's also very random. But there's more. At one point, we see this graffiti door during the fight between Pearl's bullies and the crazy grandmother. As we can see right here, we can see Squidward smells and Krabs is a blank, a direct throwback to this scene from the SpongeBob episode Sailor Mouth.
Squidward smells. Good. Krabs is
Do you kiss your mother with that mouth?
Well, sometimes, but not recently.
Even SpongeBob himself only shows up in a blink and you'll miss it moment. He has just 3 quick cameos, which is kind of crazy that he was making cameos in his own show, but I guess it makes sense. This episode is all about Pearl. And there's more background cameos as well, by the way. If we look over here, we can see Mermaid Man, Barnacle Boy. If we head over to this scene, we can see Bubble Buddy. And if we take a look right here, we can find the health inspector from the iconic episode Nasty Patty.
I'm going to need you to bring me one of everything on the menu.
Excellent choice, my darling. Coming right up.
Whoever wrote this episode definitely knows their SpongeBob lore, because it's really cool to see all of these characters that we have not seen in a long time popping up. The episode SpongeBob Trash Pants turns a simple beach cleanup into a high-speed spectacle, brimming with references to SpongeBob's past. The episode finds SpongeBob volunteering to rid Goo Lagoon, Bikini Bottom's beach, of litter, and in doing so, he essentially becomes a one-sponge sanitation army, complete with a snappy uniform.
Trash, trash, everywhere trash. Picking up flotsam and jetsam. SpongeBob's the name, and litter's my game. So if you got garbage, I'll get some.
Well, longtime fans will immediately recognize SpongeBob's outfit in that last scene I just played, as it's almost a duplicate of the Union Soldier-style uniform he wore during the indoor campout of the Season 6 episode Pineapple Fever. The difference, though, this new version is bright white and sports a taller cap, but the homage is unmistakable. It's a fun visual cue that SpongeBob is entering battle mode against trash, much like he did against Cabin Fever. And indeed, he takes his new duty comedically seriously, which, as you guys know, that's how SpongeBob is. Remember when he became a hall monitor? He took that job equally as seriously. Anyways though, when this potato chip bag catches the breeze and flies off, SpongeBob gives chase across Bikini Bottom, and the episode becomes a grand tour of Easter eggs. The first stop, the boat rental kiosk at Goo Lagoon, which eagle-eyed viewers will remember from the episode Abandoned Twits. And there's more. As SpongeBob sprints past, determined to catch the rapper, he suddenly pulls off a classic gag. He deepens his voice to a booming baritone and sprouts a heroic square jaw. This hilarious transformation is a direct callback to this scene from the episode Hall Monitor.
And assume my duties as
Hall Monitor!
gotcha.
Fell for the old tears of a trash man routine. I'll just put you in my pocket for safekeeping.
As you just seen, SpongeBob for a moment acquires a deep authority voice and ends up looking like a total Chad, a Giga Chad. Look at that jawline. In Hall Monitor, it was a part of his overzealous persona, and seeing it resurface in an episode years later, like 20 years later, is a perfect inside joke showing that SpongeBob is still a control freak, and he can have a really nice jawline sometimes. The chase scene becomes a who's who of Bikini Bottom cameos. At one point, the hot rod tough guy from the episode Midlife Crustacean zooms by in his flaming convertible.
Hey, you guys must be lost! Doofus Drive is around the corner!
This time though, he gets pulled over by a police officer for speeding. The tough guy instantly becomes a softie. He produces flowers and chocolate out of nowhere and hands them to the cop in apology. But meanwhile, in the midst of the chaos, Bubble Bass barrels through the scene wearing a familiar ensemble he wore way back in the season 1 episode, Fools in April. I guess Bubble Bass hasn't updated his wardrobe since 1999, which is a cute detail for observant fans. And keep your eyes peeled on the background as Bubble Bass tries to escape SpongeBob, as for a split second, Patrick is visible hanging from a carnival prize hook on the boardwalk, desperately trying to stay hidden. The visual gag references Patrick's antics in The Whole Tooth from season 9, where in this scene he does a very similar action at a fair to avoid going to the dentist.
Whoa.
And we have a winner.
Thank you.
Oh, darn it.
It's a tiny detail, but it rewards viewers who catch the parallel Patrick once again hooked at a fair. But guess what, guys? We're still not done. There's more, and there's a lot more. As SpongeBob's pursuit takes him through town, the animators populate the streets with old establishments we've seen in prior episodes. We pass by mattresses and then some, and if this store looks familiar, it's because we've seen it before. It's the exact same store from the old school episode, The Lost Mattress, where SpongeBob and friends bought a new bed for Mr. Krabs. Next is Martha's Craft Zone, which again, we haven't seen it for a while. The last time we seen it was in the episode Have You Seen This Snail, when SpongeBob gathered supplies to make Missing Gary posters. And then, in a triple whammy, we see Weenie Hut Jr.'s, the Pizza Pie Hole, and Taco Sombrero. Now I'm hungry, but this is the trio of fast food joints where SpongeBob tried working at when he got fired in the episode SpongeBob, You're Fired. Seeing all these locations on one boardwalk is like a mini SpongeBob map of memories, cleverly inserted without fanfare. They establish Bikini Bottom's continuity, as all of these places still exist and are open for business, even as SpongeBob rushes by on his mission. The climax of the chase sequence is equally jam-packed with even more references. SpongeBob ends up launching into the air and crashes directly into a horse-drawn funeral carriage, driven by Slappy, the living dummy character from Nickelodeon's crossover, The Patrick Star Show. As SpongeBob hurtle through the psychedelic sky, keen fans will notice it's the same sky tunnel that Mrs. Puff and SpongeBob flew through in the episode Doing Time. Here's a side-by-side, and yeah, man, this is a reference to a season 3 episode. It's really cool. Reusing that distinctive swirling background for SpongeBob's trash flight is a brilliant deep cut. And even the title card of SpongeBob Trash Pants carries an Easter egg. Its design mimics the title card of Jellyfish Hunter from season 2, except now there's trash everywhere around the title. But actually, there's more, and you really need to be a nerd to catch this one. As a cherry on top, the episode slips in a meta reference that even the most seasoned fans might have been stunned by. For those who don't know, a WH-2O radio tower appears during the chase, a sunken red and white boat with a tall antenna, mass broadcasting music. Casual viewers might just see a random radio station, but SpongeBob nerds like me recognize WH-2O as the fictional Bikini Bottom radio from the Best Day Ever album, a SpongeBob music album released in 2006 that opened with a WH-2O skit. I'm gonna play it here. I'm gonna try to put some music in the background maybe so it doesn't get claimed, but listen.
Hi, radio listeners. This is SpongeBob SquarePants. When I'm in Bikini Bottom, I listen to Al Bacori, the tuneful tuna, on WH2O. WH2O.
In Trash Pants, this very station is shown for the very first time in the series, making the first ever crossover of a SpongeBob album element into the TV show. On the other side of the station is text proudly declaring nothing but chase music since 2006, a cheeky reference to the album's release year and the jaunty jaunty chase music it featured. It's an Easter egg that nobody saw coming, not even me, breaking the wall between SpongeBob music and cartoon canon. And with that, SpongeBob Trash Pants cements itself as a treasure trove of inside jokes. An episode that, much like SpongeBob's trusty uniform, stitches the old and new together in one entertaining package. This next episode, Squirrel Jelly, has 2 Easter eggs in it. For the first one though, we have to rewind back to the episode Jellyfish Hunter. Now we haven't seen this character, who's known as Friend, for a very long time, but near the ending of Squirrel Jelly, look, he makes his first appearance in a very long time. Now the other Easter egg is related to a song, as if you listen closely in the scene I'm about to play, the song I Hate People, which is from another SpongeBob episode, SpongeBob's Place, can be heard in the background.
I can have the best of times all alone because I hate people!
Here's one that you guys probably weren't expecting, but in the new SpongeBob movie, the SpongeBob movie Search for SquarePants, if we look at one of the promotional posters, we can see that SpongeBob and Patrick are mimicking the exact pose that Jack and Rose make in James Cameron's 1997 film Titanic. Similarly, said poster's tagline, "Near, far, wherever pirates are," is a parody of the line, "Near, far, wherever you are," from the song My Heart Will Go On by Celine Dion, which was the main theme of Titanic. Hopefully we'll have more Easter eggs from this one once it comes out. Next up, let's talk about another SpongeBob movie, SpongeBob Sponge on the Run. This is a more recent SpongeBob movie, and I guess it's more of a legitimate one considering it was actually in theaters. And basically, in this film, Gary goes missing, so SpongeBob, Patrick, and the rest of the gang set off on a journey to find Gary. The movie also serves as like a setup and introduction for Camp Coral. I didn't really like that part of it, but I did like the movie overall. But anyways, let's get into the Easter eggs. There's a bunch of them, starting with something we already talked about today, and that's one of Plankton's robots, this robot right here. He originally appeared in the episode Plankton's Army, where Plankton builds this robot in the attempt to go to the Krusty Krab and order coral bits as a trick to eventually get the Krusty Krab Krabby Patty secret formula. Also appears in Sponge on the Run, as he can be seen in a background inside the chum bucket right here. Here's a side-by-side, and yeah, here's another one. At one point in this film, Squidward says the following line,
"Another day, another migraine."
Well, this line is a reference to an old school SpongeBob episode. If we go back to SpongeBob Meets the Strangler, Squidward says the exact same line in this episode.
Another day, another migraine.
On-time percentage, 12%.
Grain.
I don't know about you guys, but I think that's an Easter egg. Let me know what you think in the comments though, and here's another one. At one point, we meet King Poseidon's tattoo artist, this mean looking guy right here, and we'll notice that if we look closely, there's this tattoo with the date May 1st, 1999. It's on his arm, and this is also a reference, as it turns out, May 1st, 1999 is the date that SpongeBob first ever aired on television. Another really cool reference is a reference to the first SpongeBob movie. In this movie, we get this scene where we see the basement of the Krusty Krab and eventually the paddy wagon. Now, it isn't identical, but we get a very similar scene in Sponge on the Run. Not only do we see the same basement, here's a side-by-side, and this is the same location from the first movie, but we get something similar to the paddy wagon. If we do a side-by-side, you'll notice that the paddy wagon was more of like a Krabby Patty, whereas this new one is more of like a Subway sub, right? I guess? I don't know, now I'm hungry. If we head over to this shot where Plankton says the following lines,
"Never hurts to employ a little hyperbole."
If you look closely when Plankton says this line, he poses very similarly to this random piece of like stock Plankton artwork. Here's a side-by-side, and yeah. Now for this next one to make sense, we have to go back a little. When this movie was first announced, there was a bunch of promotional material released. For example, this Lost Pet promotional poster. If we look closely, we see that it lists Gary as Gare Bear, which is actually accurate. This is a name that SpongeBob has literally referred to Gary as before, more specifically in the episode Crabborg.
Gary? Gary? Gare Bear?
speaking of that same poster, there's another really cool Easter egg revolving around it. And as you can see, there's a phone number on it right here. And back in the day, if you called this number, you'd get the following recording of SpongeBob.
You've reached SpongeBob and the Find Gary hotline. If you've seen my beloved pet snail, please leave a message after the beep. Okay, now how do I make the beep? Is there a special button? What do I press? Maybe I'll just hang up. Do I say the beep? Boop! Oh, shoot, I booped. I should have beeped. Beep!
This was a really cool level of attention to detail just for a movie, and I remember it really getting me excited at the time. But once the film came out, there was a glaring issue. They do this whole Camp Coral thing. And to be blunt with you guys, this was done to promote Camp Coral, the show, which ended up coming out like a year later. But this decision kind of just took a big poop on SpongeBob lore, as if we rewind back to the SpongeBob episode Treats, there's this photo which shows that SpongeBob met Gary at a pound. That's how he got Gary.
Oh, Gary! It's a framed photo of the moment I picked you out at the pound. I remember that day like it was yesterday.
So I guess it isn't an Easter egg, but it's something I wanted to point out. The whole SpongeBob meeting Gary at Camp Coral thing is like a major inaccuracy. And that isn't it. If we take a look at Sandy, they do the same thing, where they try to say that SpongeBob first met Sandy back in Camp Coral, but this literally isn't true, guys. Like, there's a whole episode dedicated to SpongeBob and Sandy meeting tea at the Tree Dome. An iconic episode. It's like the third or second episode ever of SpongeBob.
So, what's your name?
Sandy. So, what do y'all call yourself?
I'm SpongeBob!
So yeah, it would be impossible for SpongeBob to meet Sandy at Camp Coral. But yeah, let's keep it moving. I got a couple more Easter eggs left from this movie, and then we'll talk about some more from another movie. Let's rewind back to those earlier scenes with Plankton, as there's more references there. As if we take a look at Plankton's wall of failure, there are a bunch of references to his previous schemes from previous episodes. And we're gonna go one by one. For example, there's this one, which references the episode Culture Shock. Here's a side-by-side of what it's referencing. There's this one referencing Welcome to the Chum Bucket. This one referencing The Algae's Always Greener. This one right here, which references the Krusty Krab training video episode. This one, which references the first SpongeBob SquarePants movie. These are a bunch of references, and there's some more here. I'm not gonna mention every single one of them, but how cool is that? I'm still not done yet with Sponge on the Run, guys. And this next one is very, very obscure. I really like this one, as you have to be a nerd to catch it. It happens during the flashback scene where Squidward has a flashback of the camp's talent show. If we pause right here, we'll see that Sandy is seen juggling chainsaws. And this isn't random. We know that Sandy likes to do extreme things. We've seen her do many extreme things, but we've actually seen this whole juggling a chainsaw thing before. If we rewind to the episode Squirrel Record, look, she does the same thing.
Most chainsaws juggled.
This one, you need the eyes of a hawk to catch it, okay? You need to go like super detective mode to catch this, okay? But during one scene at the Krusty Krab, if you look closely, you'll see this sketch right here on the cashier window. And it might just seem like a random sketch of SpongeBob, but this is actually a sketch of Sponge Boy, which is a reference to SpongeBob's origins. For those of you who don't know, back before SpongeBob was SpongeBob, he was Sponge Boy. But due to some issues with copyright, specifically with this Sponge character right here that was on a pen, they had to rebrand the character and change his name from Sponge Boy to SpongeBob. And this sketch is one of his prototype designs. So yeah, a really cool Easter egg and a good way to end it off. In the episode Feral Friends, a mysterious anatomical event called Neptune's Moon causes all of the residents of Bikini Bottom to revert to wild versions of themselves. The story itself is a tongue-in-cheek homage to classic monster movie tropes, but more importantly, it's chock full of SpongeBob lore and Easter eggs. As chaos erupts and our beloved characters turn into real-world sea creatures, two notable absences are Plankton and Karen. Well, not really Karen because she's a computer, but especially Plankton. They never appear in the final episode, which made fans like me wonder what would happen if Tiny Plankton got zapped by Neptune's moon, and we got to see the real-life sea creature version of him. Well, this was actually answered for us, and it came from a deleted scene revealed in a storyboard animatic. In the cutscene, Plankton is waiting for Karen to bring him his dinner, and that's when Neptune's moon hits. He transforms into a feral, microscopic copiapod and skitters off. But when Karen returns with his meal, she mistakes mini Plankton for a legitimate pesky bug and splats her husband before casually flicking away the gooey remains. Damn, Karen's a savage. To be honest with you, I can kind of understand why this scene got cut because it's not necessarily the most graphic scene. There's been some worse stuff in SpongeBob. I mean, especially if you've seen the episode The Splinter, but this was pushing it for a kid's show. But deleted scenes isn't the only thing I want to talk about. Don't worry, there's some actual Easter eggs coming up and lots of interesting facts as well. With the town in crisis, Sandy Cheeks deliberately calls on somebody who might understand what is going on. This leads to the surprise reveal of the French narrator. And not just the voice that we hear all the time, but in person. Sandy contacts the narrator, and we can actually see him in his undersea submarine. And fun fact, this is actually only the second time that we've ever seen the French narrator on screen. The first was all the way back in season 2's No Free Rides, during this clip right here.
It means another whole year of boarding school! What happened?
Well, Feral Friends brings him back after over a decade, which honestly is pretty cool. As the scene progresses, the narrator explains that Neptune's moon is a rare event that happens once every century, explaining what's been going on here. But if you pay close attention, you'll notice that the narrator has actually gotten a costume update. In his 2000s appearance, he wore sleek modern scuba gear. But if we look at it side by side with a shot from his original appearance and this one, he's now decked out in like an old-fashioned brass diving suit. It's pretty fresh. This retro suit, complete with a round metal helmet, is itself an Easter egg, as producers have confirmed that it was supposed to bear some sort of resemblance to the Cyclops from the original SpongeBob SquarePants movie. I mean, the French narrator's new look isn't exactly identical, his helmet is a bit different, and there's some other differences, but hey, if the creators are saying it's a reference, then I'm not going to argue with them. But there's actually some more references here with the French narrator. As speaking of his submarine, the vehicle itself hides a historical reference, as the submarine he pilots through Bikini Bottom's waters strongly resembles a German U-boat from World War II. Feral Friends is also special for bringing back Patchy the pirate and his iconic pet, Potty. Patchy, the live-action pirate played by Tom Kenny, SpongeBob's voice actor by the way, was a staple of early SpongeBob specials, but they kinda did away with those after a while, and he hadn't been seen on the show for about 5 years prior to this cameo. The episode frames Patchy and Potty as observers of the Neptune's moon incident, corresponding with the French narrator from land. And this marks their first live-action appearance within the series since Legends of Bikini Bottom. Fans welcomed Patchy's return, but there's another Easter egg hidden in plain sight, or rather in earshot. If Potty the parrot sounds a bit different, it's because he's now voiced by somebody new, or actually somebody old. Doug Lawrence, Mr. Lawrence, and the person who voices Plankton actually took over Potty's voice acting role in this episode. And this is actually a pretty full circle moment, as Doug Lawrence is the person who created Potty's character as a writer. And I mean, this voice change is something I never even noticed, but it's actually happened 3 times. In early seasons, Potty was originally voiced by SpongeBob creator and legend, the GOAT, Steven Hillenburg, before Steven Hillenburg was replaced by Paul Tibbitt. And now, of course, Lawrence has taken on the role. So let's compare all 3 voices. Let's hear how Steven Hillenburg sounded when he voiced the character.
Potty want cookie dough.
Potty, no!
And now let's also take a listen to Paul Tibbitt's version of the character.
Look, Patchy, a Rolodex. Why, it's probably full of celebrity phone numbers. You don't need SpongeBob. You can call him yourself.
And last but not least, let's hear how Doug Lawrence does the job.
Okay, so we're looking for some fields then. No, Patchy. The directions to the North Pole are in the song There Goes Santa Claus. There goes Santa Claus. There goes Santa Claus. Left on Santa Claus Drive.
Let me know in the comments, who do you think does the best job when it comes to Potty? But let's talk about even more references and Easter eggs. As Neptune's moon sets and things get even crazier, Patchy and Potty have their own hilarious reaction on the surface. In the climax, an event called Neptune's Sun, the antidote to Neptune's moon, rises, and its rays revert everyone not back to normal, but to prehistoric forms for a brief time. Suddenly, Patchy the Pirate is transformed into a primitive caveman version of himself, and Potty fittingly becomes a pterodactyl. This entire sequence is one giant love letter to the Season 3 special, UGG, also known as SpongeBob BC, the prehistoric-themed SpongeBob episode hosted by Patchy. In this episode, Patchy daydreams about dinosaurs, and at one point wishes that his parrot was a pterodactyl, a gag that finally comes true, and that the writers finally pay off here in Feral Friends. And to make the moment extra special, and even more of a clear reference, the show underscores a lot of Potty and Patchy's scenes by using the same exact background music that played throughout Patchy's caveman adventure in SpongeBob BC. It's pretty much like the same song. Like here, I'm gonna try and play it and not get destroyed by copyright. Here's the version of the song from SpongeBob BC.
I told you prehistoric times were fun. Hey, how's about I teach you kids how a caveman makes a fire with 2 sticks?
And here's the version of the song from Feral Friends. To drive this Easter egg home even more, Patchy's behavior once he becomes like the prehistoric version of himself mirrors that of the character Cavey, the friendly primitive character that Patchy thought from Ice in this special.
I call him Cavey. He jumped in. It's okay, Cavey.
In Feral Friends, as soon as Patchy devolves, he starts grunting, stomping, and acting like a caveman himself, just like Cavey did. And honestly, it's a great multi-layered reference. So the episode A Fish Called Sandy from season 15 actually has like almost an entire video's worth of Easter eggs. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, this is the most amount of Easter eggs I think I've ever covered in one episode, as this episode A Fish Called Sandy has so many, and there's actually a lot of interesting lore and fun facts about this episode as well. But yeah, the episode opens with a scene that immediately lets us know that this is going to be a nostalgic episode, as it kicks off right off the bat with an Easter egg. We see this orange scallop right here perched up on a wooden stand, just chilling in the morning sun. And if this looks familiar, it's because it's nearly a shot-for-shot recreation of the opening of a season 1 episode. If we go back to Opposite Day, that 1999 episode, we get a very similar scene where a scallop sat outside of Squidward's house, and here in this new episode, it mirrors the scene exactly, even down to the like same exact wooden perch. Like if we show them side by side, we can see that it's even the same little wooden platform. And yeah, it's a fitting start for an episode designed as a loving visual tribute to SpongeBob's early years, as you guys will see. I mean, even the title itself, A Fish Called Sandy, is actually a playful reference to the 1988 comedy film A Fish Called Wanda. In fact, the premise of this episode also riffs on the famous short story The Fly and its 1986 film remake about a scientist's experiment gone awry. Here, Sandy Cheeks plays the role of the bold experimenter, eager to swap her DNA with a fish, a scenario that promises a lot of comedy and, as you'll see, is jam-packed with so many Easter eggs, guys, like holy cow. Also, just saying, guys, I am a little sick. I just played another concert with my band. Here are some photos from the concert. And I was singing a lot. I sang like 30 songs, so if my voice is a little bit shaky, that's why. But also, you guys get to see these photos, and it's just another reminder that I am not AI and I'm a real boy. But let's keep it going. At the very start of this episode, after the scene with that scallop, Sandy and SpongeBob meet up, and when we first see SpongeBob, he's found goofing around with a crumbled gum wrapper, making it flutter and fold for his own amusement. SpongeBob is a very simple boy. Well, longtime viewers might recognize this as a subtle nod to the season 1 episode, The Paper. You know, the episode where SpongeBob famously entertained himself with like a scrap piece of paper, which caused Squidward to literally go crazy. I'm pretty sure he even gives SpongeBob like the deed to his house to get the paper back. But yeah, this seems to be somewhat of a callback to that, but it also might be a coincidence. Nonetheless, this small detail immediately sets the tone. Nick Jennings, the show's original art director from seasons 1 to 3, makes his return after over 20 years. He was missing for a while. And this dude jam-packed this episode with subtle touches to the show's early days. Even the title card art uses the same background style and hand-drawn lettering from the first season. For example, here's a side-by-side. And there's a ton of other things that make it clear that A Fish Called Sandy is deliberately steeped in nostalgia. But back to the plot. Sandy invites SpongeBob into her tree dome, eager to show off her latest invention. As they enter, observant fans are greeted by an old friend. A very nostalgic Easter egg right here. As if we zoom in over here, we can see Birdie, the same orange bird from Sandy's debut episode, Tea at the Tree Dome. And if we rewind in Sandy's first episode, this little bird was happily seen splashing in the bird bath in that episode as well, only to be rudely interrupted when a desperate SpongeBob dove in to soak up water. Here, over 2 decades later, we see Birdie again, making for a really cool callback. Inside the dome, Sandy unveils her new invention, the Fish You Up machine, a contraption designed to swap genetic traits between animals. It's actually really cool, and as she explains its function, she affectionately calls SpongeBob Square Dude.
Boop that button, Square Dude! Boop.
This nickname is actually a reference to Tea at the Tree Dome as well. As in SpongeBob and Sandy's very first meeting back in that episode, Sandy says the following line.
Hold on there, little square dude!
Back in that season 1 episode, it was the first time Sandy ever used that moniker, and it was pretty much the last until this episode. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, guys. There are so many more Easter eggs in this episode. So let's keep it going. As the machine zaps Sandy and Fred, poor Fred, by the way, he was just like signed up against his own will for this experiment, clearly. But as the transformation happens, Sandy undergoes a cartoonishly detailed transformation. We see her grow gills on her neck while her lungs shrivel up, which is animated in almost the exact same way as a scene from the season 2 episode Pressure. If we go back to that episode, Sandy challenged the others to see who could last longer without their usual habitat. And when she removed her helmet underwater, her lungs visibly shrank and dried out as she struggled to hold her breath. Well, A Fish Called Sandy replicates that visual gag lovingly, with her pink lugs deflating just like balloons, just like SpongeBob fans saw back in 2001. Here's a side-by-side, and as you can see, it's very, very similar. Also, to cap it off, the sound effect used when Sandy's lungs are shrinking is actually the very same sound effect that we heard when SpongeBob himself shrank down to a withered sponge on the grill back in Nature Pan. Here's the sound effect from A Fish Called Sandy. And now here's the sound effect from Nature Pants. Hopefully you guys can see what I'm saying here, but they're pretty much the same sound effect. Moving on though, when the smoke clears, Sandy's experiment appears to be a success, at least initially. She now has gills like a fish, meaning she can breathe underwater without her air helmet. But this whole mad science setup is actually more than just a plot device. It's the show's playful take on The Fly, which we mentioned earlier, with Sandy effectively turning into the fish in this scenario. The episode embraces the classic science fiction vibe while filtering it through SpongeBob's quirky lens, giving it that Nickelodeon spin. It's really cool. It's kind of interesting how like the SpongeBob team does this. It's actually a very common thing where there'll be references to very obscure media. The Fly isn't necessarily obscure, but if you're like under the age of like 30, you're not really gonna get the reference, which is why I'm here. With Sandy now able to live like a fish, she and SpongeBob embark on a day of fun. And this kicks off an extended montage that, dude, has so many Easter eggs in it, and there's a reason for it. As I mentioned before, this episode served as a one-time return for Nick Jennings, the original art director for the show back in the first 3 seasons, which for those of you who don't really understand this role, I'm not gonna go into like depth about it, but pretty much Nick would handle all art. He was in charge of all the art. He'd work with all of the different artists, the storyboard artists, and was a big part of the art style and all of the art tropes from the show's original first few seasons. He was a big deal and really shaped a lot of our childhoods if you're someone like me. So this dude made sure that nearly every shot in this sequence contains a familiar background, character, or gag. For example, the first stop is this meadow where Sandy and SpongeBob frolic and sniff flowers together. Looks like a good time. Well, you may recognize that this backdrop or background right here is actually from the episode Fun, more specifically from SpongeBob's famous Fun song, where we see SpongeBob dance through a meadow of flowers while teaching Plankton about friendship. If we do a side-by-side, we'll see that here, the exact same flower-dotted landscape is lovingly recreated, as SpongeBob and Sandy take a moment to appreciate the bloom. And you've probably noticed now at the side-by-side, this is more than a pretty background. It's a direct callback to a fan-favorite musical moment from like 1999, and it's made even more special because Nick Jennings, if we go and look at the credits of the episode Fun, was actually the art director who contributed to this original meadow. And this is going to be a running theme throughout this entire video. So let's continue. After the Fun reference, the montage then kicks into a lively pace. SpongeBob and Sandy don their karate gear, with SpongeBob in red gloves and Sandy in her green, just like the outfits they wore back in Karate Choppers. Another reference. Also, for a brief scene, the pair engage in some friendly karate sparring, which also seems to reference that season 1 episode where their karate obsession first got out of hand back in Karate Chopper. And there's more going on here. Seashell Park, where Sandy and SpongeBob practice karate back in the same episode, Karate Choppers. This might not seem like actually a big deal, but Seashell Park is a location that hasn't been seen often since its original appearance, making its reappearance here a treat for hardcore fans. The animators even restructured a tiny background detail from the earlier seasons. For example, we can see a Porto Head portable toilet in the park right here. And again, this might not seem like it's a big deal. It might just seem like a random porta potty, right? But this specific outhouse was a common art trope back in the show's first 3 seasons. For example, it was a prop in episodes like Bubble Buddy from season 2 and SpongeGuard on Duty from season 3. But once Nick Jennings left the show after season 4, it visually disappeared from the show entirely. Like, that's a fact. If we look at any episodes after season 4, none of them have this prop, the Porto Head portable toilet. Well, it reappears here in A Fish Called Sandy, and I don't think it's a coincidence that this is the episode where Nick Jennings returned. So a really cool Easter egg that's kind of like a deep cut. It's seemingly kind of mundane, right? Like, I'm sitting here over explaining a porta potty, but when you understand the lore and history, this is really cool. It is a reference to the show's earlier seasons. And we're not done yet. The montage's rapid fire tributes continue as SpongeBob and Sandy have a laugh in downtown Bikini Bottom. They're shown standing in the city making disgusting armpit farts, which, just saying, back when I was a kid, armpit farts would like really gross me out for some reason. I don't know why. Anything fart related as a kid would make me like so uncomfortable, which is kind of weird, right? I don't know why. I don't even know why I'm telling you this, but this is just the relationship we have, all right? Cartoon Corey and, you know, his subscribers, we have an open relationship. But yeah, they're doing armpit farts right here. And even this shot has a bunch of references. For one, a very specific anchovy incidental character walks past them. A lot of you probably aren't catching this, but this fish is familiar. In fact, he's one of the incidental crowd characters first seen way back in the episode Fun. Specifically from when SpongeBob was searching for Plankton, this anchovy, sometimes dubbed as Incidental CM2, hasn't appeared in like decades. He was essentially a one-off, one-time background character from 1999, most likely created by Nick Jennings. Well, Nick Jennings brought him back, giving us another deep-cut detail only nerds like me would ever notice. And the SpongeBob fandom wiki. I'm gonna give them credit for this one. As if that weren't enough, the background of this street scene features the return of this giant red flower arch that eagle-eyed fans might recall from early episodes like Pizza Delivery, Suds, and Nature Pants. This large flower-shaped archway was another signature background element in the first 3 seasons, often visible in wide shots of Bikini Bottom that vanished after Jennings left the show. Again, this is another one that might seem very random, but the lore and history that I'm explaining here is what makes it cool. SpongeBob and the gang never actually visit this thing back in season 1, 2, or 3, and honestly, it's actually a pretty random background detail, but as I mentioned, after season 3, it disappeared. 10-year-old me, like 10-year-old little Corey, certainly did not notice, and I doubt that any of you watching did either, but we now know the answer as to why, and that's that Nick Jennings left the show. So see, some of these things I'm talking about, they're like random and they seem kind of like mundane, but hopefully you guys are getting the picture here. With the lore, it's actually very interesting stuff. And I mean, I don't mean to brag, as I always say, this is what all content creators should be doing. Like, if you want to make content on YouTube, you should be going the extra mile, but this just shows how hard I go. Because if you were to go and look at the Wikipedia page for this episode, all right, the SpongeBobpedia page, there's lots of the stuff I'm talking about, but I've added so much additional lore and history here, and it's because I love this stuff. It's just so interesting to me. I need to touch grass, but let's keep it going. Another quick segment during that same montage shows SpongeBob and Sandy romping across a field of like hydrothermal vents, these things right here, and as they hop from vent to vent, a blast of hot water from one vent blows SpongeBob straight upward, separating his body from his pants for a split second. Well, this visual gag is a clever reference to the funhouse scene all the way back in Valentine's Day from season 1. In that episode's carnival montage, SpongeBob and Patrick walk through a funhouse, where a gust of air blows SpongeBob up, briefly stretching him apart in a very similar cartoonish fashion. I like these ones, honestly. Like, these kinds of homages where they take a classic gag and reimagine it in a new context show that some of the production team is familiar with the show's history, which is important, right? Like, that's the issue with some of modern SpongeBob, is you can tell that the team making modern SpongeBob isn't always super knowledgeable about the show's lore and history. But anyways, I'm rambling, and we're still not done yet, as even SpongeBob's signature pastime, bubble blowing, gets a nod. In one scene, Sandy struggles to blow a bubble, until SpongeBob steps in to demonstrate the technique, just as he famously taught Patrick back in the episode Bubble Stand, another season 1 episode. Now, after a whirlwind day of fun, like, Sandy and SpongeBob did a lot of stuff in this episode, especially in that montage. But as it winds down, SpongeBob and Sandy find themselves atop a hill overlooking jellyfish fields. They got a really nice view, just saying, look at how pretty this looks. If we look closely though, this very beautiful moment hides yet another Easter egg in plain sight. If we zoom in right here, we can see a rock-shaped snail, and this is another reference, as if we go back to the episode Nature Pants, this season 1 episode has a moment where SpongeBob tries to live among the jellyfish, and in one scene, to escape a furious Patrick who's trying to get him to come back to society and be a normal person, SpongeBob camouflaged himself by hiding behind a certain something. Now, if we look at these side by side, we can see that very same snail design, a stony shell with a snail's eyes peeking out, is present here, giving us another really cool Easter egg and reference to another classic episode. This is like a 26-year-old reference right here, pretty cool. Back to the plot though, as this moment at Jellyfish Field leads to this episode's turning point, where Sandy starts to shed her fur since she's transformed into a fish now. And when the molting finally stops, we get a close-up of Sandy's new fishy appearance, and she strikes a pose that I kind of found familiar. If we head back to the episode Tea at the Tree Dome, once again, this pose in A Fish Called Sandy is nearly identical to a pose Sandy held, specifically when she first introduced herself to SpongeBob. If we look at them side by side, it isn't like exact, but I mean, it's pretty darn close, right? Like, let me know in the comments what you think. I think that this was a direct reference. But of course, SpongeBob is astonished and a little concerned by Sandy's fully fishy transformation. Like, imagine your friend just transforming into a different creature, but Sandy herself is like stoked about this. And this leads us to Goo Lagoon, where Sandy wants to see if she can actually swim now that she's all fishy. And this location gives us even more Easter egg. And if we look closely, working the counter is none other than the same chef, this guy right here, from all the way back in the episode Ripped Pants. If you don't recognize him, let me explain. This burly purple fish wearing a white t-shirt and a cool chef's hat ran the Goo Lagoon snack bar back in Ripped Pants.
Delivery! Did you order 20 cases of Ripped Pants?
He's only appeared like a few times since. Like, for example, he made like a quick cameo in the episode Abandoned Twits, but this episode marks his true return to the series. And there's more going on here, as when SpongeBob leans casually against the McFlaky stand, the background music playing is very familiar. It's a track called You're Nice, and it's actually the very same tune used as the title card music for Ripped Pants. SpongeBob's pose itself here is also a direct reference. He props an arm onto the counter and kicks one foot up up behind him, which is almost exactly how he leaned on the ice cream stand back in Ripped Pants just before delivering his lame joke. Seeing SpongeBob strike this same stance here with Sandy by his side chuckling is another really cool reference. But this is where things get really interesting. After grabbing some snacks, SpongeBob and Sandy depart Goo Lagoon and head home. And as they walk along the roadside, viewers are treated to one of the most unexpected location reveals in SpongeBob history. Fish Hooks Park reappears right here. This very rare area, an open field just with a ton of dangling fish hooks everywhere, was of course the central setting of the iconic season 1 episode Hooky. And I mean, it pretty much hasn't been seen since. It's a very rare location, so seeing it here is kind of a big deal. Like if we go back to Hooky, SpongeBob and Patrick infamously played on these fishing hooks like carnival rides, despite Mr. Krabs' warning that they'll end up dead in the gift shop, if you guys remember. It's a classic episode, and to see the same park drawn again here is a deep cut for fans. There's also another musical reference here, as fittingly, the musical score that plays as they approach this location is The Great White, the same dramatic tune that debuted in the original Hooky episode. So not only is there like a physical Easter egg here, but there's also like an audio Easter egg. How cool is that? I would play them, but I'm not trying to get like spirit bombed by Nickelodeon copyright, so let's not risk it. As you can imagine though, Sandy, now fully transformed into like a fishy sea creature, cannot resist the shiny hooks, just like Patrick couldn't all those years ago. So she peers up at a particularly enticing baited hook. Well, there's another Easter egg here, as one of the very worms from all the way back in Rockabye Bavalve is shown curled around the hook Sandy has her eyes on. If you guys need a refresher, it's this worm from Rockabye Bavalve. I'm gonna play the clip, take a look.
Hello, sea creatures! I bring you greetings from Apple World! Wait! We will bury you!
This little purple worm was last seen being plucked from his apple home in that clip I just played you. Somehow I guess he like survived, I don't know how, because here he is again, about to be eaten by Sandy. If we do a side-by-side, we'll see that his design with the same cute face and purple body is duplicated exactly. It's like a perfect match. Anyways though, inevitably Sandy takes the bait, literally. Unable to fight her fishy instincts, she bites the hook, and in an instant, she's yanked upward. This whole sequence lovingly parodies the climax of Hooky, but with the roles reversed. In Hooky, SpongeBob himself got snagged on a hook and was nearly reeled to the surface before jumping off at the last second. In fact, SpongeBob's facial expression of shock as Sandy is pulled upward is drawn exactly like a reaction shot from Karate Choppers, of all places. Specifically, the face he made when Mr. Krabs fired him for doing karate at work. It's a very odd reference, but side by side you can see the similarities. It isn't identical, but it is close. Above the ocean, we see live action footage of fishermen on a boat. Another callback to Hooky, which also cut to real fishermen whenever a character was pulled from the water. The fishermen in this episode, however, get a surprise. Instead of a tasty fish, they've reeled in a confused sea squirrel hybrid. In a comedic twist on catch and release, the anglers take one look at Sandy and decide she's not worth, can't really blame them. So they toss her back into the ocean. By now, Sandy is fully embraced behaving like a fish, which leads to one final crazy chase scene. Back in the water, transformed and running on instinct, Sandy starts running through Bikini Bottom. And as SpongeBob pursues her, we get another cool Easter egg, a deep cut. As we can see, SpongeBob passes by a wooden fence where we see Gary the snail perched on top, singing a sea shanty tune that we've heard before, as this is actually a recreation of the ending scene from I Was a Teenage Gary. Back in that season 1 episode, a snailified SpongeBob and Squidward joined Gary on a fence to sing a meowing version of Blow the Man Down as the show ended.
Meow, 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 meow.
Meow, 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 meow.
Here in A Fish Called Sandy, only Gary is present on the fence, but he's singing the exact same song.
Meow, 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 meow. Meow, meow.
Dude, what a cool reference. This is a very easy one to miss, but a really cool reference nonetheless. And guys, that actually does it for this episode. Can you believe there was that many Easter eggs in this one freaking episode? Holy cow. I hope you guys enjoyed all the Easter eggs I found, and let's talk about more in another episode. Dude, this SpongeBob episode has so many Easter eggs in it. In the season 16 episode, Squidward's Tough Break, this is a fairly new one by the way, Squidward Tentacles finally gets a day off of work and his boring job at the Krusty Krab and plans a fancy brunch at a high-class bistro. Or is it bistro? I don't know, let me know in the comments. All I know is that those places usually have bagels and coffee, and that stuff is really yummy. But yeah, Squidward, dressed to impress, heads to what he believes is this cafe, only to end up at a very rare and infamous location, the Salty Spittoon. And dude, this is where we can find a ton of Easter eggs. Fans will recognize this place as the same like dive bar first introduced all the way back in season 3's No Weenies Allowed, where only the toughest fish dare to enter.
I had a bowl of nails for breakfast this morning.
Yes, so?
Without any milk.
Right this way. Sorry to keep you waiting.
In that classic episode, SpongeBob famously struggled to prove his toughness at the door. And I'll be honest, we've actually seen the Salty Spittoon plenty of times since No Weenies Allowed. Nonetheless, in this episode, the writers were smart. They put Squidward in the Salty Spittoon. He runs into Reg, this guy right here, the very same doorman from No Weenies Allowed, who literally chucks him through the doors of the bar. Well, from this point onward, this episode gives us a shit ton of nostalgia, with there being a bunch of Easter eggs and familiar faces. For example, one of the very first is a deep cut character. This guy right here, Harry the Health Hazard. He's like a wrestler who hasn't appeared in quite a few years at this point. This dude first showed up in the season 12 episode Patrick's Tantrum, and he's back here in Squidward's Tough Break, seen among the Salty Spittoon's patrons. This sets up for a quick gag where Reg promptly punches Harry right in the stomach. Ouch. That looks like that would really hurt. I don't think I personally want to mess with Reg. The Easter eggs and references continue inside the bar, as the episode literally becomes like a who's who of all of SpongeBob's different like tough background characters. I mean, the show's team clearly had a blast populating this episode and the Salty Spittoon with obscure tough guys from across the SpongeBob universe. There's a ton of them here. Another example is this dude right here, a fish that fans like to refer to as the Huge Guy, a giant muscular purple fish that you'll remember from the iconic episode The Fry Cook Games. Back in that season 2 episode, the Huge Guy carries Patrick out on his back.
Bow down before the awesome might of this huge guy who's carrying the real contestant, Patrick Star!
Years later, in this very random incidental character, the Huge Guy appears in the Salty Spittoon on the wall of the toughest guys. And there's still more. This entire Salty Spittoon section of the episode is like overflowing with different Easter eggs, and this was likely by design. It seems the writers in recent seasons have been eager to revisit it. Like, it's clear that Nickelodeon has made an effort to make the Salty Spittoon like somewhat of a reoccurring location within SpongeBob lore now. In fact, the Spittoon has reappeared a few times since season 13. So yeah, the location is back full swing in the show. And to fill out the bar's background, the art team seems to have dug deep into the character archives, and the result is a ton of rare character cameos during the Salty Spittoon sequences in Squidward's Tough Break. For instance, a tough ladyfish named Mo appears, a really cool Easter egg because Mo actually originally came from the Camp Coral spin-off series. Like, Mo isn't a regular SpongeBob character. They were brought into the main SpongeBob series during Salty Sponge, and later in this episode, Squidward's Tough Break, as we can see them right here. Another example is the HR Thug, who originally appeared back in the episode Selling Out, where he threatened Squidward. The art team needed to fill up the Salty Spittoon and looked for any random thug or criminal-like character they could find, and trust me, this is a good example. The HR Thug is very random, and he appears right here in Squidward's Tough Break. But we can also spot this character right here, the Biker Fish, originally designed for the episode Potato Puff. Like I said, the art team had to dig deep, so they pulled this character from Potato Puff, and they're now a regular part of the Salty Spittoon crowd. But there's plenty of classic tough guys that originated back in No Weenies Allowed that also make a comeback in this episode. For example, my boy Tattoo Terry. This guy, for some reason, just looking at him is so nostalgic to me. Here's a side-by-side of him in this new episode and him back in No Weenies Allowed. There's also this guy, the Hate fish, and even this dude, the Popeye fish, another very familiar fish if you're an old school SpongeBob fan like me that watched No Weenies Allowed back in the day. Now, to be fair, some of these characters have occasionally reappeared in other episodes over the years since No Weenies Allowed, but seeing them all assembled together back inside the Salty Spittoon, the very place that originally defined them and created them, is really cool. There are a ton that I didn't mention, so if there's any fellow SpongeBob nerds like me, let me know in the comments all of the other reappearances in the Salty Spittoon of characters who have appeared in the past that I missed. As the plot continues though, Squidward starts fitting right in with the Spittoon crew, eventually earning the respect of Reg and the gang, thus turning himself into a new tough guy persona known as Crazy Legs. This leads to a subtle Easter egg during a scene at the Krusty Krab, where Squidward shows up to loiter and mess with the normies, as he puts it. Squidward demonstrates just how evil he's become by doing something truly terrible, guys.
Mind if I double dip? No, 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 no!
I know, right? Put this dude in jail. Freaking lock him up. Incidental 1D is absolutely disgusted by this, but here he is in this episode making a very familiar face. And if this disgusted face seems familiar, it's because it absolutely is. It's almost identical to a classic reaction from the episode Something Smells. And that season 2 favorite, SpongeBob's rancid and nasty breath from his infamous peanut onion ketchup sundae. Like, this dude literally eats a sundae with ketchup in it. That's, oh my gosh.
Ketchup! Onions! Good thing I still have these peanut plants growing in the windowsill. A little texture never hurt.
This makes his breath so bad that SpongeBob makes this dude in the movie theater, Incidental 1D, recoil in just disgust from the smell.
I hope my horrible ugliness won't be a distraction to you.
Not at all, boy!
The Squidward's Tough Break R team faithfully recreated Incidental 1D's meme-worthy face, giving us a direct reference to that Something Smells gag, which is very nostalgic, at least for me. That's it for this episode though, but let's head into another episode, like I always say, with more Easter eggs.